Okay, let's dive in. You're listening because you want the core knowledge, the stuff that actually matters, without getting bogged down, right?
Exactly.
So consider this your shortcut to understanding something crucial, how we might protect our brains as we get older.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're really digging into the modifiable risk factors for three big things: stroke, dementia, and late life depression.
Yeah, and we've gone through quite a bit of research for this. The main source we're focusing on is a major systematic review. It's from researchers at Mass General Brigham.
Published in the Journal of Neurology, Neurosurgery, and Psychiatry, right? So a pretty reputable source.
Definitely. And our goal here is basically to pull out the most important, most actionable bits for you from this complex study.
And one thing that jumped out immediately, at least to me, was this number. 17. They found 17 shared risk factors.
17 modifiable ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Factors that seem to link these three conditions: stroke, dementia, depression.
Which is kind of huge because it suggests that if you address these factors, you might be reducing your risk across the board, not just for one condition.
That's the really powerful idea here. It points towards prevention.
Okay, so let's back up a tiny bit. Why is focusing on preventing these specific conditions so important in the first place?
Well, I mean, these aren't minor issues, are they? Stroke, dementia, late life depression. They can dramatically change someone's life.
Yeah.
We're talking significant disability, loss of independence, cognitive problems, emotional suffering. It affects the person, their families, everyone around them.
It's a massive impact on quality of life.
Exactly. But the hopeful message from this research is that, maybe a lot of that impact isn't inevitable. Some of it seems preventable.
Right. So these researchers, they tackled this huge amount of data to find these 17 factors. How did they actually do it? What was the method?
So they did what's called a systematic review. Think of it like this. Instead of just looking at one study here and there,
Which can sometimes give conflicting results.
right, they looked at meta-analyses. These are studies that pool together the results from lots and lots of previous studies. It gives a much stronger signal.
Okay, so pooling the evidence.
Exactly. And their specific aim was to find risk factors that, one, we can actually change through behavior or treatment, the modifiable ones, and two, popped up consistently linked to at least two of the three conditions: stroke, dementia, or late life depression.
Got it. Looking for those common threads, the things we might actually have some control over, and they landed on 17. That feels like a lot.
It is quite a list. You want to run through them?
Let's try. Okay, so there's blood pressure.
Yep. Kidney disease.
Fasting plasma glucose. That's blood sugar, basically.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Total cholesterol.
Right. Alcohol use. Diet. Makes sense. Hearing loss. That's interesting.
It is, yeah. Pain,
Yeah.
chronic pain, presumably.
Mm-hmm.
Physical activity or lack thereof.
Purpose in life. Wow.
Sleep, smoking, social engagement.
Like staying connected with people.
Exactly. And finally, stress.
Phew. That list covers, well, almost everything. Physical health, lifestyle, mental well-being, social factors.
It's quite comprehensive. It paints a picture of brain health being tied to, well, whole body health and life circumstances.
And the crucial part is, the research suggests tackling even one of these could lower your overall risk.
That seems to be the implication. You don't necessarily have to fix all 17 at once. Improving even one area could make a difference. And it really underlines how linked these conditions are.
Right.
There's a quote from one of the researchers, Dr. Jasper Senf. He said, dementia, stroke, and late life depression are connected and intertwined.
Intertwining.
So if you develop one of them, there's a substantial chance you may develop another one in the future, which really drives home why hitting these shared risk factors is so potentially powerful.
It's like strengthening the foundations to prevent cracks appearing anywhere in the building.
That's a good analogy, yeah.
Yeah.
Addressing the underlying vulnerabilities.
Okay, so out of these 17, did any particular factors stand out, like having a bigger impact than others?
Yes, they did identify a couple that seemed especially significant in terms of incidence and the overall burden of disease.
Which were?
High blood pressure and severe kidney disease. Those two showed the strongest association with increased risk across the conditions they studied.
So keeping tabs on blood pressure and kidney health is particularly vital then.
It certainly seems that way based on this review, yeah.
And flipping that, what about factors linked to lower risk? Any good news there?
There was. Things like physical activity and also engaging in leisure activities that have a cognitive element, like doing puzzles, reading, things like that.
Okay, so staying active physically and mentally.
Right. But, and this is important, the researchers added a note of caution here.
Oh.
They suggested that this association might be partly because people who are already in the very, very early stages of brain decline, maybe even before symptoms are obvious, might just be less likely to engage in those activities.
Ah, I see. So it might not be purely that doing puzzles prevents dementia, but maybe that people who are developing dementia are less inclined to do puzzles. A bit of a chicken and egg situation.
Potentially, yeah. It's a really important nuance. Doesn't mean those activities aren't good for you. They likely are. But the strength of the causal link specifically for prevention needs, careful interpretation.
That makes sense. It's rarely simple, is it? Okay, so we have this list. We know some factors might pack a bigger punch. What's the so what for someone listening? How do we use this?
Well, this kind of research is exactly what informs practical tools. For example, Mass General Brigham, the institution where the researchers are based, actually developed something called the Brain Care Score.
The brain care score.
Yeah, it's designed to help people measure and track their efforts to protect brain health based on many of these modifiable risk factors. And they've apparently updated it recently with these latest findings.
Okay, so it connects directly back to what we were talking about, turning this research into something actionable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It gives you concrete areas to look at if you're thinking, okay, what can I do proactively?
And didn't another researcher, Dr. Jonathan Rozon, have a really great quote about this? Something about simplicity.
Yes, he did. He pointed out that, healthcare often feels incredibly complex.
It definitely can.
But he said these findings remind us that, actually, preventing disease can be very simple. And his reasoning was because many of the most common diseases share the same risk factors.
That's such a powerful point. Focus on the fundamentals and you get broad benefits.
It's quite encouraging, isn't it? It cuts through some of the noise and suggests focusing on things like blood pressure, diet, activity, sleep, stress. These core pillars can have a really wide-ranging protective effect.
It almost feels like a relief, in a way, that it doesn't have to be some complicated, obscure supplement, but maybe just, going for a walk and managing stress.
Right. And we should also mention, this isn't the final word. The researchers themselves are calling for more studies.
Oh, really? On what specifically?
Particularly on how best to modify risk factors for late-life depression, which seems maybe less understood than for stroke or dementia in this context.
Yeah.
And they're also planning, I believe, a randomized controlled trial to really test the effectiveness of an intervention based on the brain care score.
So the science is still moving forward, still refining our understanding.
Always. That's how it works.
Yeah.
But the current evidence is already giving us a lot to work with.
Okay, so wrapping this up, the big picture here seems to be that there's a surprisingly large number of factors, these 17 things, that are actually within our potential control. And tweaking these could significantly shift the odds regarding stroke, dementia, and late-life depression as we age.
That's the core message, yeah. It offers many different avenues for potential risk reduction.
So, thinking about that, and building on what Dr. Roseanne said about simplicity, maybe the final thought for you listening is this.
Considering all these shared risk factors, what's maybe one small change you could explore in your own life? Something that feels doable, but might create that positive ripple effect across your long-term brain health?
That's a great question to ponder. It doesn't have to be overhauling everything overnight, right?
Not at all. Maybe it's just consistently taking the stairs, or making that call to a friend you haven't spoken to, or scheduling that checkup.
Little steps focused on these key areas.
Exactly. We really hope laying out this research helps you think about that. Maybe look into that brain care score, or just reflect on which of these 17 factors might be most relevant for you.
Because ultimately, understanding this stuff and taking even small, proactive steps feels pretty empowering when it comes to our long-term well-being.
Absolutely. Put some control back in our hands.